So, Dr. Tammy, why call it the Naked Doctor?
Well, it's the naked truth about health, wellness, and lifestyle, but it's also fun not to wear clothes in the studio. Hi, welcome back this week, The Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tammy.
And this is Cryssie.
And we have an exciting show, of course.
Of course, we always do.
Yeah. Is that bragging?
I don't know. I think self-confidence and bragging there's a fine line there.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a jerk, but you do. You do.
We want you to know.
You know what?
Really
and you know, we've had some compliments that have said, I really love your shows. They're really great. So, yeah, I think we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit.
Let's do that. Yeah,
1, 2, 3, pat. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, getting lots of new Facebook views.
Yeah.
People following our stuff.
Yes. Okay, so now I feel like there's a little more responsibility than before when it was just us laughing at ourselves.
Game up a little bit.
Yes.
The world is watching.
Yes. So how have you been?
Very
Haven't
good.
seen you for a little while.
We've been on vacation.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm like vacationing from the vacation. What's up with that?
No, there is that post-vacation thing that happens where it's almost like, okay, I got to get back in my regular routine now.
I was sleeping and I'm like thinking, I'm just going to sleep today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're doing the show today.
Oh my gosh, I have responsibilities. Wait, I have children. Where do these kids come from?
Like life.
Yeah. But you know what? That's good too. I mean, it's good to have those different things to look forward to. I think if every day was exactly the same, I think I would go nuts.
Yeah. I saw this thing one time and it was like an EKG blip and it was like, like on an EKG your heart, beats and it's like an up and then a down, an up and then a down, and they say if it's flatlined, you're dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. so if your life was like that, that's pretty much when nothing else is happening to you. So
yes. So we have an amazing guest in the studio this morning, the amazing Bryan Post.
I know that guy.
Yeah. He's pretty awesome. Hello, Bryan Post. How are you this morning?
Hi, ladies. Glad to be back here on the Naked Doctor Show. I'm doing fantastic.
Good. Happy to have you.
Yes. Normally we talk about parenting and all the amazing stress things that you know about, but today we're going to talk a little more focused on stress and a little more focused on the world of hormones and
oh my gosh, the world of hormones.
And
dun,
how that
dun,
plays
dun.
into stress.
That almost sounds like one of those films that you saw in grade school. Welcome to the world of hormones. Your body is beginning to change. Oh God.
I know, our son had like this note from school for like 2 weeks about the movie.
Oh yes, my daughter was kind of stressed out about that. She's like, Mom, I know somebody's going to start giggling. That was her main concern.
That's the worst thing that ever happens.
I know.
If they start giggling.
Yeah, that would be awful.
You're okay.
Well, I'm glad that we're talking about hormones.
No.
Really, I mean, it's becoming more and more prevalent, and I'm beginning to understand more and more about how all of that works together, how our thoughts are driven by. And I would love to talk a little bit more about that too, because I know that we have hormonal responses to what we feel is our surroundings, things that are happening to us, right? Mm-hmm. So we're like, oh, my surroundings are causing me stress, and the stress is kicking me into this hormone thing. But to me, it's less about what's happening to you and more about your thought process about what you're observing that then triggers that hormonal process. So you could see something and it triggers a memory in you, and you begin to have stressful thoughts, and then your body responds with stress hormones. Or you could see something and interpret it differently, and then your body would respond with different hormones. And I think so many people think of it as a reactionary process when really it's a internal thought process that's triggering a lot of that. What are your thoughts on that, Tammy?
Well, it's funny. We were just talking about confidence, and we were talking about where you feel comfortable, and like saying this is going to be a great show.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. I'm pretty confident in that.
Well, when you talk about hormones, of course, my confidence level is about the physiologic hormones, the female hormones, the male hormones, and what drives a menstrual cycle.
Right.
We're talking about that movie that the kids watch.
Oh, yes.
So
yes.
From a doctor perspective, from a med school perspective, that's where my comfort level is. From Bryan's perspective, he has worked with families and stress and cortisol and oxytocin.
Oh, yeah.
So those are, when we say hormones, those are usually the hormones that, kind of come up in his brain probably, and the hormones that come up in my brain are estrogen and progesterone and testosterone.
Right. But really, that's got to be one big cocktail that's driving a really big bus, is what I'm thinking. I think there's way more drivers in there than what we tend to think.
Well, none of it's separate. It's all an interchangeable system. Candace Pert wrote a book called The Molecules of Emotion, and she said the statement, a gut feeling, the metaphor of a gut feeling is actually a biological reality, and there's no separation between the brain and the body. And so what you were just saying, Cryssie, about those internal thoughts through something you see, actually you can have those internal thoughts, and those thoughts happen on a cellular, unconscious level. So so the thoughts we have on a cellular level, on an unconscious level, occur before the thoughts we have on a cognitive level. And you can experience those thoughts not only through what you see, but what you hear, what you touch, what you taste, the temperature of your body, digestion, and movement. All of those things can cause you to have a sensory experience, which then triggers thoughts on a cellular level, which then release memories and emotions, which then come up onto this conscious cognitive level. And then 98% of the time, we don't even know why we feel what we feel.
Yeah.
Because it's unconscious, it's cellular. And so much of that is occurring every single day. And then you were talking about that in relationship to weight loss and, when we start feeling bad or getting unhealthy, what are the thoughts and the emotions going on during that time? And when those things come up, how do we process them? And I really feel like the majority of society doesn't even think about those things.
No, again, now this is a good example when people say multidimensional thought.
Yes.
Okay. Now, people will look at that and go, multidimensional, does that mean that I have to think about how space folds over? No, it's nothing like that. It's just kind of deepening what we are including in what we consider our experience. These are things that most people day to day would never even take into account because we're very focused on, what's solid and what's in front of us. But the way that you're talking about it, gosh, there's so many other aspects and things that are happening that we're not even conscious of, that we're interacting with all the time. If we can be aware of that, I think that's like the biggest step, just to be able to say, I am aware.
And then let's take that to the next dimension. The next dimension is the process and the catalyst for those past experiences, that present awareness, and how that shapes our future.
Yeah.
And so it's very much multidimensional. Yeah. So we get really present in the moment, but that present energy, that present awareness is actually what you're projecting into the future.
You're creating that future experience for yourself right now.
That's right.
And if you can get out of that loop and realize that you're doing that and get out ahead of it,
you gain that much more control over it.
And you level up. Oh my God, that's good. That gave me chills just now. This is so cool. I love it when Bryan's on the show.
And that's one of the things I've been wrapping my head around just this week is that kind of instead of having the emotion and then the circumstance that matches the emotion, to create the choice about how you're going to feel about something and then have the circumstance be created out in front of.
Right. And that's so hard for us to wrap our brains around because we think in a linear way. Yes. We think past, present, and future. And if you think about it, Bryan, like you were saying, it seems like our mind, and I want to wrap ego into this a little bit because I think people get confused when we start talking about ego. I feel like personally that the ego has been kind of what I would consider now to be an outdated operating system. It was a very functional operating system for us when we were in early development as a species, because you are laying down those memories very specifically from a thought process, the hormone fingerprint that we were talking about, all of that. So that when you feel those things again, or when something triggers that, a smell, a thought, just something in a tone of voice, that little memory pops up to go, warning, this is where you were in a really bad place before. Now, at that time, maybe it was, you're being chased by a lion. Remember how bad this is? You don't want to get eaten, so you better run. Well, and as our lives have changed, We may not be in that kind of situation, but that ego is still there to go, remember, this is like when
looking
you're,
for the
yes,
threat.
right, looking for that threat. And we've personified it now to the point where we feel like that voice is what's running the show. And that's not it at all. We're running the show. That little voice is just there as a warning. But when we let that dictate how we feel all the time, all we're doing is now creating within our reality reasons to trigger that ego over and over and over again, like a loop. Yeah.
That's an excellent concept, that outdated operating system, because the ego is also very unconsciously driven. And as long as we are unconsciously driven, we are being motivated from our past experiences. And that's what we know about the brain, is that every time we return to, the brain always returns to the way the experience was handled the last time. And so in order to get beyond our ego, we have to move into the super ego, which is a conscious state, which puts us in the present. And it puts us focused and it puts us aware and not hostage to the past experiences in our lives. And so I think that's just an excellent way of saying, ego is an outdated operating system because it's really operating reactively and from the past.
It really is. Okay, and if we can realize that we can gain control in a moment that previously we would feel helpless and uncomfortable, and rewrite that and make the decision, then going forward, now you have almost set a new precedent. So that's what breaks that cycle of having that same process roll over and over in your life, right? It's taking the reins.
And the way you describe that, I can hear people thinking, wow, that seems really hard. But it's both simple but not easy at the same time. So it's simple because we can literally rewrite that process in any given moment. The difficulty is slowing down and stopping and breathing and being aware of that moment and that stuff that you're reacting from, so you can actually rewrite it.
Yeah, so it's
that's
like,
the challenge.
I'm going to choose what I record from this moment.
Absolutely.
Wow, I like that.
So they're saying it's time for a break.
Okay, I think that's a good time for a break. I got to let that sink in a little bit.
When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about breathing a little more, because I just had an awareness just this past week about breathing. So we'll share that. Be right back with The Naked Doctor. Welcome back to The Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tam.
And this is Cryssie.
And we're in the studio with the amazing Bryan Post today.
Bryan Post.
Hello. And he's my husband.
Oh, yes. There's that, too.
My wonderful. I'm just talking about Father's Day, and it's Father's Day. He's a wonderful father.
Oh,
and he's
good.
Just all that in a bag of chips. And we usually are supposed to do like bios at the beginning of the show, but his experience is extensive with the stress model, and he's an international speaker and talks about stress and a lot with parenting and attachment disorder and things like that. And we're also bringing him in today to talk about hormones and the influence of stress, and where he's really kind of taken things. And I think it's just so wonderful thinking about healthcare in our nation today does not address these things. It is just about the pills.
No.
In fact, we were just talking with one of his family members this weekend, who was saying that, you know, she's got issues, and it's like, it's just so easy to go to the doctor and just keep getting more pills, and to talk about surgery, you know, she's got some hip pain, talk about having hip surgery, you know, and they just make it so easy instead of really focusing on the issues. And, you know, that's really, I think, where, you know, our passion is together with doing what we do with the healthcare, you know, reformation.
Yeah.
You know, how, you know, whatever you want to call that.
Kind of like an overhaul.
An overhaul.
Yep.
So, you know, I love what we're doing with our new mission with that. And this is all just a part of that, which I think is beautiful. But one of the things I did want to say about breathing, that I was just reading one of my kind of self-help books this week, and it was talking about breathing. It was talking about breathing is to really do good diaphragmatic breathing, which I know as a singer, you probably know this. I've never really been taught this. I did a little bit of singing
yeah, and then I get surprised when I get with people that don't understand how the breath works or how to breathe properly, and I'm like, what?
So I was realizing, and they were saying in this book that a good like abdominal breath is like literally if you were to put a book on your belly, you would see the book rise. And I was kind of paying attention, and I was sitting there with my cell phone, and I got a text, and I kind of have a little PTSD with like I'm on call constantly,
right.
You know, as a
like, oh my God, what's this gonna be?
And it's like I realized I was tensing up in my abdominal area, you know, just like when I just got a text,
right? And
I just realized how many times during the day do you tense up and not breathe?
Yeah. Well, I noticed that this week also. I had a friend, and again, this wasn't my own personal experience, but I have someone very close to me who's going through a lot of difficulty, very similar to emotions that I felt over a very particular situation. And even though I'm not experiencing that with her, just that memory of that, and I was literally, we were just driving down the street, and I'm looking out the window, and the thought, because I care about her, of her and the pain that she's going through, came to me. And there was a visceral reaction, like I was so conscious that I felt my insides tighten and change for a moment with that, you know, that roller coaster stomach dropping feeling, and it was so physical. And I thought, wow, a thought caused that physical reaction within me. What else is happening when that's going on again with the hormone piece? And I had to draw myself away from those thoughts. As much as I care about her, I thought, wow, I really don't want to dwell in that soup right at the moment. And I made a point to take some deep breaths, and I thought the best thing I can do for her is to send her love and not sit and dwell on my own memories that are being brought up by this situation.
Well, and I think even as important as that is your ability, the ability in that moment to even recognize it, to be in touch with your body enough. We live in a really disconnected head-body society. Like we spend a lot of time walking around in our heads and get completely disconnected from our bodies. And so we have those gut reactions all the time, but when we're not connected, we don't pay attention to it. Yeah. So just to pay attention to it, you like really took control of your emotion in that moment. And see, that's a lot of times people say, well, I've got control of my feelings, I've got control of my emotions. Actually, that's not true. Our emotions just decide when they want to come up and come out. And until when you really have control of your emotions, it is you have the conscious ability to really take a hold of them and do with them whatever you want to do. And you were demonstrating in that moment having that control, and that's a really profound place to be in. It's being very present.
Right.
That's what that's
well,
doing.
It had weight to it in that moment. And I remember thinking, I want to talk about this when we get back on the show. But what I want people to understand too is that is it is like learning a new habit. The way that we tend to think, our thought habits are just as ingrained in us as anything else. And changing any habit takes focus and patience with yourself. This is not stuff that's just, well, I'm the master of my emotions now, you guys, so, see you later. It's not like that at all. I'm proud that I was able to take a moment and be that present and understand what was happening to me. But that's just like step one in a very long process.
It takes repetition.
Yeah.
Because what you're actually doing is creating a new brain pathway. So when you're actually overcoming an old habit and creating a new habit, you're creating a pathway. I like to think of it as being in your backyard. And if you walk across your backyard and you walk back, then you can see the grass still pressed down for just a little while. Well, if you keep walking that path, and that's what forming that habit is, pretty soon it becomes dirt, and pretty soon you kill all the grass, and pretty soon the grass doesn't grow there anymore, and you've got a new pathway. Yeah. And that's what we do in our brains. That's why repetition is so important for creating and forming new habits.
Yeah, I think of that in terms of like muscle memory. When I'm trying to learn a new song, or there's a piece of the song that seems really difficult when I start, I just literally do it over and over and over again until I can be in the moment in front of a crowd, and it'll just run. Like it just does it on its own at that point. And yeah, it's exactly the same way. You just got to practice it.
I was listening to last week's show on the way over today, and the last thing I heard before I got out of the car was I was listening about relationship and how we keep showing up the same way in relationships. And so we wonder why this stuff keeps happening. Why is this same, whether it's at work or whether it's wherever we are, why does this same, quote, jerk keep showing up?
Yeah, it's almost like a program that's running. It's like a program
that you've just kept running, and it's the way you're showing up to the world, because like if you've ever experienced like a bad situation where you like had to go to like the complaint department and you go with a nasty attitude, the person there that's trying to help you suddenly becomes very combative back, and you're like, man, the whole universe is like,
why is it conspiring against me this way?
You don't realize that emotion you took in, you're kind of being a jerk,
to me, it's like a lens, and you are clouding or coloring that lens with whatever you're choosing to think and feel in that moment. And you could have exactly the same experience with a clearer lens and have a completely different takeaway.
Yeah.
But that's so crazy.
And then I don't think we think about sometimes that, we talked about sensorization, where you're setting your goals and you're bringing in like a sight and a smell and a sound and, and like going into the car dealership and smelling the leather of the car that you want, just really making that sensory. We forget how impactful our sensory issues are, because it's like, you're driving along and you hear like a song from the 70s or the 80s, and it brings up a memory. It brings up an emotion from somewhere in that brain.
I'll hear like a 70s mellow rock, and I'll be in the back of my mom's car and I'll smell it and everything. It'll be like the strangest thing. But that's magic, and you can use that to your advantage. I feel that way. Absolutely. Because when you are doing these things where you're trying to imagine the perfect situation for yourself and you bring in all those emotions, it's almost like you're pre-laying a memory.
Yeah.
So if the tendency is to bring that stuff back to you, then of course you're going to attract more of that.
We've just revealed a secret of the universe.
I think so. Oh my gosh.
It's never been said that way before.
No, it's never been said that way before.
So the very thing that you think you're victim to, like, I can't control my emotions because that sad song comes up, I'm just going to be sad.
Yeah.
Just be aware that you can use that same sensorization to create your future.
I've actually done that, because there was a song that I loved, and then a bad experience got tied to that song, and I was so mad because I loved that song and I didn't want that particular person to hijack that song for me. So I made myself listen to it over and over again while doing fun stuff. And I totally and now I love that song again. That's weird. I wasn't even thinking about it that way. I was just like, he doesn't get this song. This song's mine. Yeah. And then
I owned that.
And it worked. So maybe that's like a pre-memory, a prememory. Yeah, when you just make the decision that this is what this memory is going to be.
It's so funny. This is so corny, but I totally did that around a James Taylor song. Like one of my earliest memories of a James Taylor song was with my childhood friend, who her dad had taken us to a James Taylor concert, and he was kind of a bald guy, and he kind of reminded me of James Taylor as the bald guy, and I had that song kind of in my head. Well, when I was in residency, I had this bald guy that was like a total jerk to me. And I was traveling in the car one day to a kind of resident little rural area where we were doing like prenatal care, and I had to kind of ride with him, and that James Taylor song was playing, and like every time I would hear that James Taylor song after that, I would remember
that one guy that you didn't like.
And I had to like go, this is crazy, because I used to love that song, and that song was really tied to an earlier memory, so it was kind of a cognitive override. And you can totally do that. You know,
you can. I think that's a really good place to start, because you had something tied to that, but it wasn't that heavy. So you were able to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to make a decision to change this. And you did. Now, there should be no reason why you can't do that with anything else, if you're aware of it, if you're conscious of it. With the song, it was pretty easy to say, oh, that's what's doing it. Yeah. I think that's pretty brilliant. Bryan, what do you have to say?
I think so, absolutely. And what I want to emphasize with all of that is, and Dr. Tammy started by talking about, it was actually my mother that we were having the conversation with about her health, is that healthcare, today's healthcare, they just focus on symptoms. And so she's quick to want to, she's almost 70 years old, she's quick to want to go just get another pill, go to the doctor, and it just happens, and get a shot. It just happens over and over again. And not once does the doctor stop stop and say, hey, what kind of stress do you have going on in your life? Not once does the doctor say, hey, let's do an inventory. Let's do a diet journal. Dr. Tammy talks a lot about doing food journals. Let's look at that. And let's look at your hormones. I mean, and so because of our healthcare system today, we are so focused on just symptoms and not addressing the whole person. And that's what we do at Better Living RX, and we call it next generation healthcare. And it is those, everyone knows that person who's been to the doctor over and over and over again and hasn't gotten better. They're still on more pills than they were. They feel worse than they did. And what we've done is we've pioneered a way to bring that individual holistic health focus with a coach. And so we focus on their hormones, we focus on their stress and all the stress conversations and the consciousness, we focus on their nutrition, we focus on their fitness, and we focus on helping them detox their bodies and getting clean, and then a reboot system. And so I feel like that's so important to just taking health to the next level, as opposed to just staying focused on sick care, which is what we do in our society today.
Yes, and unfortunately there are a lot of us like myself that had to get to a point where they were ridiculously uncomfortable before they decided to make that change. And I think that would be an awesome thing to talk about next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're saying it's time for a little break.
I had a feeling. I saw that little wrap-up sign. I was like, I'm not going to start this conversation until...
Good stuff. Hang tight. We'll be right back with The Naked Doctor. Hi, welcome back to The Naked Doctor. This is Dr. Tammy.
And this is Cryssie.
And we have Bryan Post in the studio today.
And Bryan Post, I like how I use your full name all the time. Mr. Bryan Post, I have a question for you. I was thinking about my own weight loss process and how much I have shared a lot of this process that I'm going through, which is not common for me. It would be like a shame thing, and I would keep it all secret until somebody's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just using a little weight, no big deal.
Because what you don't want to do is set yourself up for failure.
Right, and then everybody sees your failure. What happened? I thought you were on a diet. Why are you eating that? Yes, and so we were talking about that earlier, and how I have really tried to incorporate more than just an eating and exercise plan into this process. I have really tried, kind of as an experiment, just to show other people too, this is how this can work, because everyone that has known me for a while knows that I have struggled with my weight my entire life. And so a big part of this has been turning off that notion that I needed to lose X amount of pounds every single week and mark it on a calendar, and it needs to all be off of me by this amount of time, and I have to stay on this program and I cannot deviate from it or else it's failure. I've really turned around the way that I've seen that. And a big part of that has been being able to come here every week and talk these things through. The physical changes that I've made to my diet and to my exercise regime, to me, have been a result of these conversations that I've been able to have with you guys, these understandings about what my emotions do, and having control over the way I see myself and incorporating more self-love. We all know all about that. But Bryan, this is why I feel like the mentoring part of the Better Living RX is so important, because you have to be able to have that person who has gone through a journey, who has some expertise, who can guide you through those difficult moments. Can you go a little bit more into that process?
Well, one of the really important things that you're saying there, Cryssie, is something that is oftentimes echoed by our medical director and guru, Dr. Tammy. And she says that you have to get healthy to lose weight, not lose weight to get healthy.
Yes.
And that really speaks to having to change the internal before you can effectively and in a sustained way change the external. And so a big component of that a lot of times we don't take into consideration when it comes to weight loss or just health in general is we don't take in consideration our emotions and the stress that has just wreaked havoc on our lives, which then also wreaks havoc on our hormones, which then also wreaks havoc on our energy levels and our willingness to be able to go work out, which also wreaks havoc on our nutrition, because when we're stressed out from all those other things, we want to eat really bad bad food, and then we just keep repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. So it is critical that when we are going through these journeys, not only is it a holistic journey, but that you do have someone that can walk beside you and encourage you and support you and be an inspiration during the struggles, because it is, you're creating a new paradigm for yourself, which is a new way of looking at things. And in order to do that, you have to have someone to be able to reflect off of, because the way we approach things when it comes to getting healthy is not the way the rest of society approaches things. And so that's why we spend so much time with our Better Living RX coaches and getting them certified and getting them up to speed, not to mention already working with people who have we call them a health conscious, fitness minded personality to begin with.
Right.
And then we really have something to work with that individual to really take back to their community and those individuals that they are trying to help, as we refer to as bio-optimize their health.
Correct. Because I have a really clear map of how I've done things that have not worked for me. But being able to do it correctly is going to require a map that this is all new trailblazing. This is all new. And to be able to have someone next to you that says, dude, I've been here. It's best. May not be exactly for you, but it's best if you can try this. I understand how you feel. Let's make these changes. And it really is. It's combing out those tangles so that you can get on the path that really is going to lead to success for you.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
You're saying it's time for a little wrap.
Wait,
so
what?
Start it. We'll be right back with the Naked Doctor. Hi, welcome back to the Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tammy.
And this is Cryssie.
We have the amazing Bryan Post in the studio with us.
This has been a really good conversation.
You know, it was cute because you were saying a while ago, I want to ask you a question, and you're being all formal.
I want to ask you a question, Mr. Bryan Post. Yes.
It's funny because, he has a PhD and, all the things that he does. And so sometimes I'm kind of like, when I'm having parenting challenges or whatever, be like, Dear Dr. Post.
Dear Dr. Post, I have a question for you. I want to strangle my child. Wait.
And it's I travel around with him all over, to his lectures and stuff. And I see these parents, these wide-eyed, they're all groupies, he's here. And it's I think, oh my gosh, I get to live with this man every single day. I get to ask him these questions every single day.
Well, see, that's a great thing. That's a wonderful you know what? It always means more to me when there's someone who speaks with authority on a subject who's actually living that subject. Mm-hmm. Again, you really wouldn't want someone to be, saying that they're an expert on something when clearly here's an extremely overweight person saying, here's how you lose weight. It's no, if you can't make that work for yourself.
We walk the walk.
Yeah. So I feel like that's an important part of this. Yeah,
I kept wanting to tell him at his lecture. We were just in California a week or so ago at a lecture, and I kept wanting to stand up and go, listen, y'all, this really works.
This works because we live this every day.
Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect.
No, and I that's one of the compliments that we got on the show this week. They said, we really appreciate how truthful you guys are. And I said, our show is not here's how to have beautiful nails by next week. That's not our show. We get pretty down and dirty and talk about the real problems that we're having, because how are we going to affect change if we can't be honest about what needs to be changed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're struggling with all this stuff, and it's a daily, and I wouldn't say it's a struggle. I would say that this journey is more just rediscovery of your higher self and who you really are.
Yeah, it is a growth process.
It is just splashing around in the mud and having some fun, and know, and even the times when you go, I wouldn't choose this, taking full personal responsibility for everything is a real leap to be able to go, oh yeah, no, I did. I caused that.
Yeah. You know what? Here's the way that I looked at it, because I used to think about people that I felt had wronged me in my life, and what, the tendency is to blame. I wouldn't be in this place if it wasn't for. And then it dawned on me that if you're going to give someone blame, then you also have to give someone else credit. If I'm going to give someone else blame for my problems, then it's almost the equivalent of giving someone else credit for my success. So I'm going to stop doing that. I mean, really. I was like, I'm going to take all this back. Yeah. I think that's important.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit, Bryan, what was your, what compelled you from going from the world to helping parents everywhere and helping people with stress to really, what was that pivotal moment where you just said, you know what, there's a change that needs to happen, and it needs to happen globally to our physical bodies as well as our emotional, spiritual bodies? And
well, I don't know that it was necessarily one pivotal moment so much as it was a accumulation of experiences. I pretty much watched my father die, and I watched him go through traditional healthcare for 7 years, chemotherapy, pills, pain, shingles, and he pretty much died in our front living room. And I just watched this progression and like nothing but sick care the whole time. And then when I met you and I really started to learn about hormones and the other hormones besides, like you said, my other life, my professional therapy life has been about cortisol and oxytocin. But when I really started to learn about all the other hormones and functional medicine and supplements, and then I just started to see how we've just, really been sold a bill of goods when it comes to our health. And then one day when I was in our clinic and I had several people, they were baby boomers, came through and they were trying to sell these supplements and makeups and all these different things. And I just started thinking, I was like, you know what, these people are really awesome because they keep coming back time and time again after being told no. So they keep coming back. I said, and then I know that because they're trying to sell multi-level marketing, they're probably going to be lucky if they ever make more than $500 a month. And I remember thinking to myself, wouldn't it be really cool if we had a business that these people could do that not only changed lives and made them feel really good about themselves, but also gave them a way to supplement their income, because that's what they want to do. They still have energy. They want to make a difference in people's lives, and they want to make additional money. And that's where I kind of came up with the concept. You and I came up with the concept of Better Living RX, which is twofold. It's one, a service where we provide next generation healthcare and biooptimization to individuals who haven't been able to get healthy for long periods of time, and many of these people have spent. We have some of our members are 80 years old. They've tried everything and haven't gotten better. And then the other side of that business is the Better Living RX biz, where we actually train people to become Better Living RX coaches and show them how to actually create a healthcare community in their community and create an impact. And our overarching goal is to be able to transform the health of 1 million men and women over the next 3 years. And so, we have a very big mission to transform health. I don't want people to struggle and suffer like I watched my father suffer, and sometimes even like I watch my mother suffer even to this day. She tries to do some things differently, but she doesn't have Better Living RX. She's got us who, we live from a distance, but she doesn't have someone calling her and texting her and holding her accountable and motivating her and saying, hey, there's this class or there's this walking group, and that's the way that I now am passionate. That's what I'm passionate about and enjoy spending my time doing now. I still teach the parenting stuff and the stress stuff, but I've just brought the stress stuff into this because it's the same thing. It's all human behavior.
This feels like a movement.
It is
really
a movement.
It really does, because this is exactly the kind of change that people have been aching for, I feel like, but not really knowing how to make that change. And this is something that covers the entire spectrum. And as it goes, it seems that you're growing and you're learning and you're incorporating everything that you guys already bring to the table into this awesome package that really, because that's a lot of part of what people complain about. I, as a consumer, complain about is when I go in to see my physician, how many people has he seen? that day, how many people since the last time I was in there. There's not a personal interest to me. There can't be. There physically cannot. And so I can't really blame him for not remembering the previous problems that I had. Oh, good. I'm really glad it's on the chart. Let's hope all of that was put in there. But I realized when I was having terrible problems and chronic hives that had no basis, and fibromyalgia and, insomnia. After about the 5th doctor that I saw, and you know what? I got to thank this guy. He was a jerk that day, but I got to thank him. I had some vertigo and some anxiety, and I really wasn't even sure where that was coming from. And I walked in to talk to him, and he looked me in the eye and he said, look, doctors don't want to hear dizziness. Okay, or anxiety. Doctors want to hear broken arm, ear infection, my spleen's going bad. I mean, he's looking at me in the face going, I don't know what's wrong with you. If you think you have a brain tumor, you have a better chance of getting hit by a car on the way over here than having brain cancer. Is that your problem? And my eyes got so big, and I thought, I'm having to pay this guy to talk to me this way. But I understood that in that moment of his frustration, I don't know what happened to him the 10 minutes before he came into the office, but he was being brutally honest with me.
Like the 10th time that day, and had no idea what to do with it.
Brutally honest with me to say, look, this is something you're going to have to figure out what's wrong, because if it's not a broken bone or something that's in this book over here, I'm going to have no interest and probably no ability in fixing it for you. Because of that honesty, I walked out of there that day saying, I've got to figure out what's wrong. This has got to be me. I'm the one that has to take the reins on this, which started my process into alternative forms of healing and meditation, which, in my life led to this moment that we're here right now. So this is for those people that have had those same aha moments, but have got to have some guidance from this point out. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. I feel like it's the start of a movement. So
and that's why we call it next generation. I mean, this is the next generation of healthcare. I mean, going to doctors and having, some symptom treatment is always going to be there. It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
And we work with doctors. So we incorporate the knowledge of physicians, primarily relying on our own internal team of expertise. But we work with doctors all over. But at the same time, we're not focused on symptoms. We're focusing on revolutionizing and optimizing from the inside, and then how that affects the outside and really changes people's health all the way around, and gives them a support partner to walk with them every step of the way. I mean, it's even Dr. Tammy has gone from seeing 60 patients a day to seeing 8. So you think about the impact a doctor can have when they're not seeing 60.
Right.
When all of a sudden they're seeing 8, and that same doctor that you went and sat with, who said you're going to have to figure this out, on your own. Well, if you were one of their 8, they probably could have sat with you, because doctors have an enormous, vast amount of knowledge of the human body. He probably could have sat with you and spent some time and did a little dissecting. But if you're one of 60, he doesn't have that time. In a day.
With charting.
In a day.
And everything else they want to get done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're running a business, and you're trying to be profitable. I mean, and you've got student loans and God knows what else to pay. I understand all of that.
And the pharmaceutical world,
who really wants to pushing
the drugs.
Well, and again,
and there's not a drug for that.
I don't see it as like there's a big, huge, one guy going, I'm becoming very wealthy and everyone's sick. I don't see it that way. But this is just a machine that has rolled in this direction, and it's just big, and it's going to take the consumers who actually spend the money and vote with our dollars to facilitate that change. 10 years ago, you would not see the amount of gluten-free product that you see in Walmart, and the organic choices that you have now in the big chain stores. You would not have seen that 10 years ago. We as consumers demanded it. They delivered. This is no different.
That's right.
This is no different.
That's right.
People have to demand that. But people have to, and I think that's part of what we're doing through this process of this education, that we're doing.
Just letting people know there are alternatives.
Because it's so much easier just to stay in that machine.
Yeah.
You have to really get out of it.
And you're not only are you dependent on that machine, you're funneling an enormous amount of your funds, whether they're coming directly from you or from an insurance company. You are putting an enormous amount of money into that system. Why not take that money and put it in the direction of change?
Yeah. And I get the difficulty of that, because as a traditional doctor who was doing insurance, I mean, we waffled back and forth making that leap to seeing from 60 to 6 patients, and it got a little scary there, and there were times when we were like, oh, let's just get back in the machine again.
Yeah, you know what? It's too hard to get out of the machine. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then finally, we kind of tweaked a few things and kind of found what worked so that we could stay out of that machine. So that's another thing with working with a mentor or a coach, is having that ability to navigate that, and the people who've made the mistakes and know the things the pitfalls that you're gonna hit, and to say this is normal, this is good.
Okay, so how do we get a hold? How do people contact Better Living RX?
So we have two different websites for people who are looking for next generation healthcare and looking to get connected with a coach. You can go to betterlivingrx.com, and if you're one of those individuals who's health conscious and fitness minded and wants to bring this to your community and would like to be considered as a coach, you go to betterlivingrxbiz.com.
Excellent.
And we also want to, as a part of this movement, we want to build more awareness on our Facebook, The Naked Doctor Show page.
Yes.
And our Better Living RX Facebook page.
Yes.
So please give us your comments and questions and tell us what you'd like to hear more of.
Yeah.
We really
feedback.
We really just kind of go on intuition with some of these shows and things like that. But we really want to know what people want to know.
Yeah.
And, we hope that we're kind of sharing that mission as well. So it's been a great show. Thank you, Mr. Bryan Post, for being here with us.
Mr. Bryan Post.
And we'll see you back here. Have a blessed week.
Yes,
back
take
here
care
on
of
the Naked
yourselves.
Doctor, and we're going to be doing some live shows out in the community. I'm excited about that, so stay tuned, and we'll see y'all soon.
The Naked Doctor Show is produced by Toy Robot Productions in association with Butler Broadcasting and Better Living RX. Our audio engineer is Earl Hale. Our technical engineer is Matt Wright. Our executive producer is Dr. Tammy Post. I'm Cryssie Hale, and this has been The Naked Doctor.